Hello and welcome back to Guided Souls. I'm your host, Katie, and I'm so excited to be back here for another week with you guys. If you prefer to watch instead of listen, you can head on over to my YouTube channel at Guided Soul Crystals, and you can also catch me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Guided Soul Crystals. And today is a fun episode that I'm excited to give because I turned 30 this weekend, the big 3-0. So I thought it'd be fun to do an episode where I kind of look back on my 20s and some of the bigger themes and life lessons that came through. And I have just like a bunch of little things written down, so we'll kind of see wherever the universe wants to take us with this. But I figure if it's a little chaotic and out of sorts, it's okay because that's kind of what your 20s are all about, right? And I don't know, it's interesting. I equally feel like I'm super ready to be in my 30s. Like I've been in my 30s for a couple years now. And at the same time, I feel like there's absolutely no way that I could be 30. I feel like I was 23 yesterday. How has the time flown by? So, yeah, we're just going to take a look back, and hopefully even if you're in your 20s, if you're not in your 20s, if you've been in your 20s in the past, maybe you can relate to some of the things that I went through and experienced. And yeah, we can just get some life lessons out of it together. So I think the first thing that I wanted to start with was this concept of being a baby adult in your 20s. I feel like I heard that explained for the first time a few years ago. Someone on social media, I saw, a video that said, I'm only a 5-year adult, because it was someone who was like 23 or 25 or something like that. And I just thought that makes so much sense and is so real and so valid. And I don't mean that in a way that is intended to be condescending, like, oh, you're just a baby adult if you are 21, but you honestly are. And I actually think I would have found a lot of comfort in someone telling me that when I was that young, because you're trying to figure out so much about yourself and the world and what it's like to operate on your own and like be a full human adult for the first time. And it is scary and it is overwhelming. And I think if someone was just like, hey, it's normal for this to feel like a lot because you are a baby at this, and by the time you're 30, everything will feel so much more under control and manageable, and you'll understand yourself and your life a lot more. That would have brought me a lot of comfort. It definitely would have brought me a lot of comfort to hear from my 30-year-old self when I was 20, and see how far I've come. I have overcome a lot of inner demons and turmoil in my 20s. I had some really dark spots and some really heavy things that I worked through. And to just see, I wish I could see where I'm at today, when I was 20, 21, 22, because I truly don't think that I would believe my eyes if I had seen that. Because, I think, darkness and turmoil aside, if we're just talking about what it's like to be thrust out into the world in your early 20s, I used to be so overwhelmed by little everyday tasks. Like, I don't know why, it was just the hardest thing in the world for me to like prioritize doing the dishes, taking out the trash, making sure that my home was clean, making sure that I walked the dogs every day, that I had food for myself, that I paid the bills, that I washed my sheets and towels on a regular basis. It just felt like so much. And how is everyone doing this all the time and living the rest of their life and being like a successful human being? I just could not foresee a world where I could just go to the grocery store and have food in my house for me to eat. And sometimes, honestly, I still struggle with that. It feels like a tough battle to get myself to do that. But it was like that was one of 30 weekly or daily tasks that just overwhelmed me. And I can think of so many times where I just like something as small as like going to bed with my makeup on or, not washing my face, not showering, which I know is gross, um, after working out or something, because I was like, it's just too much. I just can't handle it. And to know now that those things are just so easy for the most part. Obviously there are still days where it feels harder, but it's like, no, for the most part, I'm able to be a pretty productive human being and I don't have all of this crippling anxiety and stress over these small-ish things that I, come across every day. So I guess just if you happen to be listening to this in your early 20s, you are a baby adult. And I mean that in the most loving way. And I hope that that can bring you a little bit of solace in that you will grow, you will learn. The amount of growth that you will see in your 20s is insane. I know that we grow so much before that. Obviously, there are these huge milestones every year, but I really don't think people, you know, talk enough about how much you change in your 20s. And it was always just a known thing in my household from my dad. Like his one life rule, for lack of a better term, was like, you can't get married before you're 25. And his reasoning was you change so much between 20 and 25 that if you get married before you're 25, you'll end up being with someone that, you're not actually meant to be with because you could grow apart. Not always. You could, though. And I remember thinking that was going to be the hardest rule to follow when I was a kid. I never really questioned it. I never was like, oh, I'm going to get married early. I'm not going to listen to that. I always understood it, but I just thought it was going to be so hard, which is hilarious looking back on that. Uh, but if I had married almost anyone who I was dating before 25, I would be divorced right now. I started dating my now husband when I was 24, so he does not count, obviously. We are very happily married, but if anyone before that, if we had ended up getting married, it would have been a big mistake because I changed so much. And honestly, even between 24 and 28, when I actually got married, I changed a lot too. It's just that I changed with my now husband and he helped me change and he helped me become a better person and see the person that I wanted to be and that I was capable of being. So, of course, you can meet that person before you're 25 and you can grow together. It's not a hard and fast rule, but I just thought that that was really smart of my dad and honestly, probably something that I'm going to suggest to my kids as well. I don't know if it'll be a rule, but it'll definitely be a heavy suggestion not to get married before you're 25. And, in those relationships in my early 20s and in the friendships I had in my early 20s too, I was not my favorite version of myself. I was not the best version of myself. I truly believe I did the best I could with the cards and the hand that I was dealt. My dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's when I was 19. He passed away when I was 24. So those 5 years, I was in heavy, heavy survival mode. And I was so emotionally unavailable. I was so angry. I was just truly fighting for my life on a daily basis. And so anyone who was kind of like close to me in my orbit probably suffered from, you know, either my temper or just my like lack of consideration for their feelings or how, my actions were going to affect them. It's not like I did anything horrendous, but I definitely wasn't just the best, kindest, most thoughtful, sincere version of myself. And I still harbor guilt about that, and I'm hard on myself about that. I think especially past relationships, there's just a lot that I would do differently today. And of course, it's not healthy to like reach back out to all of your exes and hash it out with them. I think, what's done is done and it's in the past. But there's definitely a lot of things that I would do differently if I could. And I've had to really work on forgiving myself for that, and to also recognize that, there were two people in those relationships. It wasn't a one-way street. I think I have a tendency to harbor on all of the things that I did wrong, or that I would do differently, and not realize that, maybe there was also something on the other side that wasn't really helping me, or that was making me feel, less than about myself or something like that. And it's not to put blame on them, but I think it's just to recognize, we were both in our early 20s. We both made mistakes. We both would probably do things differently now. And so to just have compassion for both yourself in those relationships, but also the people that you were in relationships with. And you're also learning how to be in a relationship for the first time. So you're like a baby at being in a relationship. And I think that's kind of just like good life advice for anything new that you're starting that seems like it should be easy, that you should just have it figured out. It's like, just think of yourself as a baby at that thing. And, you're going to make mistakes. You're not always going to be the best at something. And if you just give yourself time to learn and grow, you will become a fully functioning adult at that thing. But it's okay to be a newbie at something, including being an adult and being in relationships. I think a huge lesson for me in my 20s that honestly I really didn't even start to embrace until very recently, and it's still kind of a tough one for me at times, is just that not everybody's going to like you, and that's really okay. And honestly, I would even go a step further and say, if everyone does like you, then you're probably not being yourself. Because if you are so just neutral that you don't ever piss anyone off or rub anyone the wrong way or say something that, people don't like, or wear something or whatever, if you are just so friggin' neutral and plain Jane that everyone always likes you, then people don't actually know you, and so then they can't love you. And when you're willing to just show up as yourself and say, take it or leave it, I would love to be your friend if you want to be mine, but if you don't, I understand, and I'm not going to change who I am to fit in that box. It's not only so freeing, but it just allows you to shine in the way that you were always meant to shine. And I think I spent so long trying to play it small, trying not to take up space. I still struggle with this, which I know seems odd because I put myself out here on social media all the time. It's like I'm definitely taking up space, but in my everyday life, I went to a dance class last week, and I just had to, on my drive over there, I was like, my goal for this class is to take up space, to be myself, and to not like apologize for existing, because I feel like sometimes I still do that. I'm like, I don't want to upset anyone or make anyone feel less than, so I'm just going to try and like blend into this wall here and hope that no one looks at me, which is just not how anyone is meant to live their life. I've had my fair share of mean girls who just did not like me for whatever reason. And I've actually had a couple friendships in adulthood too that have just fizzled away, not on my end necessarily, but because the other person just kind of decided that they didn't really want to be my friend anymore, which is really hurtful. But it's like I didn't stay the same. I changed, and they probably changed too. And it's okay if we grow apart. It's okay if we grow differently. Not everybody has to be best friends. There's in the elementary school that I grew up in, their slogan was buddies, not bullies. And there was a girl in my class who, seriously, she tormented me from like fourth to eighth grade. She was just a nightmare. She was so mean to me, like an actual bully. And I finally started standing up for myself and like saying things back to her. And she, of course, would go like tell the teacher on me. And then we'd get pulled into the counselor's office. And they eventually got our moms involved too. And they're like, we really want them to be buddies, not bullies. And my mom's like, you know what? That's just not very good life advice. You don't have to be a bully, but you don't have to be friends with anyone. Like everyone, why are we trying to push these two girls together to be friends? Why don't we just focus on allowing them to just do their own thing? And if they're not bullies, that's amazing. But meanwhile, my daughter is getting tormented by this girl, and I'm not going to have her just sit around and try and be friends with her. That's not like good life advice. So, sure, if someone wants to be your friend, that's amazing. But if they don't, it's really okay. Another thing I learned is that being the best at something is severely overrated. I feel like whether it was like school or dance or some other aspect of my life, I just always wanted to be the best. And I think what I realized in my 20s, and especially in my late 20s and recently, is it's not the people who are the best at what they do that succeed in life. And I know that some people are going to disagree with me on that, but just hear me out. It's not the people who are the best at what they do that succeed in life. It's the people who are passionate about what they do, who are excited about what they do, who are kind to other people in the process of doing what they do, who allow others to shine just as much as they do, but they also allow their unique abilities to shine. And they just have this quality about them that you can't describe because it's their own type of magic that cannot be put into a box. And I fully believe that, I'm not the best at anything I do. I'm not the best podcaster. I'm not the best, reader on TikTok or whatever. I'm probably not the best crystal shop, but I am so passionate about it. I have so much fun doing it. I express gratitude towards everyone who supports me as often as I possibly can. And I know that I bring something unique to the table that no one else can bring. So it's not about being the best, it's about just being yourself and showing up as yourself. And that will bring its own level of magic that could not be there if you were focused on just being the best. Because inherently, trying to be the best means like seeing how someone else is doing it and trying to like outdo them. And when you realize it's not a race, it's not a competition, I'm not even in your same lane, I'm just doing my own thing myself, that is where the magic unfolds and where you really get to shine and just be the magical person that you were always meant to be. I think probably the most profound thing that I've learned in my 20s, especially that's occurred in this last year to year and a half, is the rules to the quote unquote game of life don't exist. They are a mirage. We do not have to follow them. No one is making you do anything. You are choosing to live the life that you are living. And I know that there are going to be people who are not ready to hear that and they're going to disagree with me, and that is totally fine. But for the people that are ready to hear it, it's actually a very powerful, freeing lesson when you realize, oh, I don't have to stay in this job. I don't have to stay in this city. I don't have to stay in this house. I don't have to stay in this relationship. I don't have to stay in this friendship. I don't have to do anything. I get to choose what I want to do. I get to choose my own path, and it doesn't have to look like anyone else's path that I've known or that I've seen. And I get to do things my own way. And sure, there's a lot of scariness and risk taking that comes with doing things your own way. You know, there's definitely a comfortability to playing the game of life how you've been taught to play it as you were growing up. But when you realize that it's just a mirage and it's like a bubble that you can pop, then you look around and see that the possibilities for your life are actually limitless. There is nothing that is holding you back from living your dream life except for yourself. And it's not necessarily something that can occur overnight, because our beautiful human mind and brains and egos take a long time to undo all of the things and the, lessons that we were taught growing up of this is how you should be. And if you're not like this, then there's something wrong with you. But you can do it. And you can choose to live this life that is so fulfilling to you. And, I think one of my biggest fears in life was just waking up at 60 or 65 and looking back at, working so hard at an unfulfilling career and just thinking, where did my life go? And I'm so grateful that I woke up to that and actually took action on it at 28 and 29 instead of 58 and 59. And I'm not saying that you can't decide to do that later in life. You absolutely can. It's never too late. But if you happen to be listening to this in your 20s or 30s and you have not yet made decisions and choices that will lead you on your path to living your most fulfilled life, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? No one is going to go out and get this life for you. It's not going to fall in your lap. You have to work hard to get it. But it is so possible. And anything that you are telling yourself that is holding you back from doing it, that you can't do it for XYZ reason, is a mirage. It doesn't exist. And you may think that you have to do it, but you don't. You are choosing to do it because the consequences of not doing that thing outweigh your not wanting to do it. It's like I rewatch Friends once every couple years, and there's an episode later in the series where Chandler is miserable at his job and it's taking him away from Monica and he's having to travel and all this stuff. And so he just quits one day. Like, he just comes home and he's like, I quit. I have no idea what I'm doing next, but I quit. And I genuinely remember turning to my husband and being like, that is so unrealistic that someone would just quit their job when they have all these responsibilities. Like, we have a mortgage, we have bills. We could never just quit our jobs. And within a year, I did that exact same thing. I was like, I am miserable. This job is ruining my life. I don't know what I'm doing next, but I know it's not this. So, like, sayonara. And it has been really hard financially since doing that. But I'm finally on a path where I am seeing financial results from this risk that I put in. And the emotional fulfillment, how happy I am in my life was so worth taking that risk to me, but it might not be worth taking that risk to you. And that's okay, as long as you realize that that's a choice. You are the designer, the co-creator with the universe of your own life. It's not anybody else's fault on this earth. And once you realize how much agency and power you have over your life, you can start making decisions to have your dream life. And again, it's not going to be easy, especially if you're choosing to throw away the rule book of life. There's going to be a lot of people that have a lot of things to say about what you're doing, and that's okay. Because I've also realized that society in general tends to get mad at the people who don't follow the rules and who end up succeeding. So if you think of, I don't know, like the Kardashians or something, there's a lot of people that do not like them for a number of reasons, and I understand that. But the people who are just like, oh, they're famous for nothing, they have no talent, it's like, well, they were smart enough to see an opportunity and capitalize it and decide that they were going to make the best out of their circumstances, and now they're billionaires. So it's like, maybe, but also they worked really hard and decided that that was a life that they wanted to live, and they did. And now you're probably a little upset that they are off living this glamorous life while you're stuck at your 9 to 5 and you're extremely unhappy. But it's not their fault that you're unhappy. They just chose not to live by the rule book of life. And you probably see that with a lot of, I don't know, famous actors or singers, but especially like all of these content creators or influencers who are making millions of dollars and buying their dream house. You know, people get so upset about that. They're like, oh, they didn't have to work hard for that at all. It's like, yeah, but they realized at 22 that they could just turn on a camera and be themselves and not prescribe to all of the things that society has ever told them, and it's going to work out for them. And we're going to get mad at them for that. Like, kudos to them. Hats off to them. Let's start looking to those types of individuals for inspiration of when you think outside the box, when you dream big, when you choose not to live by society's rules, your potential and the possibilities for your life are truly limitless. And if someone gets upset with you for living that way, it probably just means that they are sick of living by the rules, but they don't have the courage to throw away the rule book. I think my last sort of major lesson theme that I learned in my 20s, or at least that I'm going to speak about today, I'm sure there's dozens more, but for the ones I'm going to speak about today, really just is about how I relate to other people in the world, how I choose to see other people in the world. And everyone has their own story that is impacting their lens that they see the world through. I used to feel like it's a super lonely feeling to realize that no one else on this earth will ever understand what you've been through. You can tell your story. You can tell your story in excruciating detail, but no one will ever know what it felt like truly to be in your shoes in that moment. And most people won't tell their story in excruciating detail. Most people, especially if it's kind of some of the hard stuff that they've gone through, won't choose to share that. And so they'll just walk around feeling really lonely and isolated, like no one knows the darkness that I've seen. And I do think that that is lonely to an extent. I would agree with that. But at the same time, when you realize that everyone is walking around that way, everyone has some story and some feeling that no one is going to understand what they have gone through, it connects you on a deep level where you just have so much more patience and empathy for the way that people are showing up in the world because you have no idea what that person has gone through. I will go so far as to say I truly don't think any human being has an easy life. Being a human is inherently hard. It is also beautiful, but it is hard. And so when we just think of the hardest things that we've gone through or the worst day that we've had and how we showed up that day, if we can extend the grace that we would have wanted on that day to other people and to say, you know what, this person is kind of being a jerk to me, but I don't know what's going on at home for them. I don't know if they just got fired. I don't know if they're having trouble with their spouse. I don't know if their parent just died. Just giving people the benefit of the doubt and recognizing that we're all going on our own path, which is beautiful, but also lonely. And so if we can just give each other the compassion and the benefit of the doubt, it truly just makes you feel closer to people. And I also discovered that when someone treats you poorly, when someone, is less than kind to you, being kind to them and giving them grace will make you so much happier than trying to get even with that person. Because when you match someone's tone, when you match their cattiness, when you are also trying to tear them down the way that they're trying to tear you down, you are lowering your vibration to meet theirs. And then you're no better than them. And so if you're able to just see them as like, you know what? If I were in that person's shoes, I would probably be behaving that same way. And what I mean by that is if I was in that person's shoes and I had lived the exact life that they had lived and I'm having the exact day that they're having and the same family and the same whatever, I would probably be acting that same way. So I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt. It really just makes it so much easier to be kind to that person. And then you're left feeling good about yourself and like you didn't have to stoop to their level. And what it all boils down to, I think, something that you can say to yourself and about everyone else that really just kind of puts things in perspective, at least for me, is everyone is doing the best they can. Everyone is doing the best that they can with the cards that they were dealt. So if you are having a bad day and you don't want to adult, you don't want to take care of your house or, go to the grocery store or make the bed or even get out of bed, that's okay for that day. You're not committing to doing that for the rest of your life, but maybe on that day, that's the best that you can do with the cards that you were dealt. And I had an experience at the grocery store. I'm bringing up groceries so much. I actually hate the grocery store, but I was at the grocery store a few weeks ago and I was doing the self-checkout and it was really confusing. There was not a designated line. It was just like people were kind of crowding around. And so I saw one woman standing, so I just decided to kind of stand next to her. And I didn't realize that there was a line forming behind that person. And so when it was my turn, like I knew it was my turn, but it looked like it was the person behind her's turn. But I knew that the person behind her had seen me standing there. So I was like, I'm just going to go. Like she knows I was standing here. And so I went and an employee at the grocery store was like, actually, miss, there's a line over here. And I was about to like explain like, oh, actually I've been standing there. And she said, oh no, she was here first. And he was like, oh, okay, my mistake. I don't know why I got like flustered by it. Maybe I was embarrassed that he like called me out or something. But I wasn't upset with him. I wasn't upset with like the line situation. It just was what it was. And I just remember thinking to myself on the drive home, like in that specific situation, everyone was just doing the best they could. He was doing his job. That woman who like pointed out where I was standing was helping me out. I wasn't a part of the line, but I was there before the line formed. So it's just like this feeling of when you see that everyone is doing the best that they can with the cards that they were dealt, it takes a lot of this animosity and thinking that people have bad intentions out and realizing, no, you know what? They're just doing the best that they can, and I'm doing the best that I can too. And I'm going to choose to give everyone in this situation grace, including myself. And I didn't really touch on it, but it's kind of woven through, self love, grace for yourself, accepting yourself, and just truly learning to be your own biggest cheerleader has changed my life. I think maybe outside of my husband, because he believes in me a lot, but outside of him, I think I believe in myself more than any other person on this earth. And that is a super comforting feeling to know that even when it feels like the world is against me, or maybe people are doubting if I'm going to be successful, I know. I know that I will be, because I know that I'm a good person, and I know that I will always make the choice to go for the scary thing that I love. And I know that I will be taken care of by the universe because I am choosing to live a life that is so authentic to me that there's no other option but good things to come in my life. So that is all that I have, at least for this week, on, things that I learned in my 20s. Again, I'm turning 30 this weekend, so maybe I'll have some big epiphany that I'll share with you guys at the beginning of next week's episode. But it was fun to take a look back, and definitely this is a super watered down version because it's short, but I just think that our 20s are such a beautifully chaotic decade. It's so many high highs, so many low lows, and I'm so grateful for all of it. Even the really, really heavy parts, I'm so grateful for it, but I'm also really grateful for myself, for going through it, for walking through it, for showing up every day, and for doing the best that I could with the cards that I was dealt. And I have a feeling that going into my 30s, I have a pretty good hand. We'll see. I know that there's always going to be, hardships and things that I don't expect, but at least for the first little bit of this decade, things are looking up. So I'm really excited to see what 30 brings me. And of course, you guys will be along for the ride with me. So that's exciting. Thank you so much for being here with me. It truly means the world to me. I will be going out of town for my birthday for a few days, and I get back late Tuesday night. So the podcast may come out a little bit later in the day on Wednesday, potentially even Thursday if I get behind on things. So don't panic if it gets out a little bit late, and apologies in advance, but I'm going to do my best to unplug for my 30th birthday. So again, thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me. And until next time, keep going. You are doing amazing, and I love you.